helping you with real estate, Mr. Mike Johnston.
Well, welcome everybody. Appreciate y'all being here. What we're going to do is I'm going to switch screens here and share my screen with you. Can you see that? So it says, so they found the property they want to buy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So today in our building blocks of real estate, we're going to be talking about you found a buyer, you've shown them the property. So the other building blocks, we're just building on top of that. So now we found the right property. They've said, this is the one we want to do. So as an agent, many times we're not sure. It's like, oh, now what do I do? They found something. Oh no. So this is just kind of a list of things that I think are important, and there's always more things that you can possibly do. So first off, so when you're showing properties, something that you need to do is I like to have the MLS printout. And so I have that, and do you guys see me too, or do you just see the screen? See both?
you.
Okay.
I see you.
I print out the MLS data sheet, and I'll have that with me, and I make notes on it. So as I'm going through the home, I say, oh, there's a water softener here. It didn't say anything about that. Or, oh, the water softener's a rental. There's some ceiling fans. There's this shed in the backyard. Oh, there's this or that. So I'm making notes of things as I go through the home. And it's always nice to have those notes later on when they choose to write up an offer because you're prepared. So that's the thing to keep in mind. Repairs, if you see something wrong, oh, there's a broken window. There was this, there was that. So make all those notes as you're going through when you're showing properties. Once they've decided on a property, for example, let's say they chose 540 Troy Avenue and it's listed for $335,000. Make sure you have a current print off of the MLS data sheet. Why? It shows compensation. It shows different things that are there and included and excluded and the current price. Because sometimes things can change. So that way you have that information. Also, download and print off the property disclosure form. If there's not one there, or it's an older property and it needs to have the lead-based paint disclosure, contact the listing agent to get one over to you just as soon as possible. It's always best to have these beforehand versus afterwards. So you've started to do that work. Now your basic game plan. What do you want to do? Do you want to offer them full price? Do you want to do different things? So you have to start to determine what it is that you're wanting to do or some ideas to share with the buyers, because it's ultimately up to them to decide what they want to do. So here we talk about some of the things that you should already know. Buyers' legal names, how they want to take title, price to offer, the ideal one, closing date, ideal versus options. When I talk about ideal, it's like we would really love to close on the 15th of October, but if we couldn't close then, we could actually wait a little bit longer. So that way you can kind of figure out some of the options that you have. Because if the seller needs to close on a certain date and you're able to do so, that would be good if you can. But if you can't, then we're going to have some negotiation going back and forth. So we find out where we can give, where we can't give, so we have that information ready to go. Preference for a closing agency. If there's a certain title company that they like better than another. Spoken about how earnest money is handled, so be prepared for it. I explained that, and I would encourage you to talk about that with the buyers too, so they know what to do. What to ask for or to have done. They want certain repairs to be taken care of. We want them to cover certain closing costs. Just trying to put all these things down already. Then you need to remind the buyers about not going out and purchasing anything else. Even if it's on credit for 90 days, same as cash or something. Anything that they do could affect their credit. Don't change jobs, quit jobs, anything like that, because all of these things will affect them. And what I found is so many times we as licensees, as real estate agents, we don't cover all this stuff. We think it's second nature, it's common knowledge, but it's not. So we need to educate the buyers, the people that we're working with, to go through these things. Moving on. Then what we do is we're going to review what's included and excluded according to the MLS data sheet. Because if on the MLS data sheet it says certain things that are included and excluded, we can ask for those things. But if there's something on there that says it's excluded, like let's say it's the refrigerator. If it says the refrigerator is excluded and we're asking for it, they may counter back with us. What I've also found out is if we're asking for the refrigerator and the listing shows that it's excluded, sometimes the agent doesn't explain to the seller and says, hey, they're asking for the refrigerator. I knew you wanted to exclude it, but are you okay with that? When we get to closing and after everything's moved out and the refrigerator's gone, we have a problem and somebody's buying somebody a refrigerator. Because according to the contract, it was included, but the listing agent may have failed in explaining on the purchase and sell agreement they were asking for something. I get a call as a broker that says, when I listed the property, I told my agent we were not leaving the refrigerator. Well, they negotiated it into the contract. Well, it doesn't matter. I told them I was taking it with them. So you have to be very careful, okay? So go through what's included and excluded. Maybe there's a trampoline that they say could be included and your people don't want it. Well, if you don't want it, you could say exclude it, or you could still ask for it and have it. Storage sheds, things like that. When in doubt, spell it out. If there's shelving in the garage that you think is going to stay and you're not sure, write it down to make sure that it stays if that's what you want. Make it easy for people. What items did you see when showing the property that needs to be addressed? So those notes that you were taking earlier, if there's any repairs, if there's any FHA concerns. Now, we as licensees start to get better and better at learning what things are going to be called for by the appraiser. If the appraiser calls out the earthquake straps on a water heater, well, and we didn't see them when we were there, that's something that we're going to possibly need the seller to take care of. And if we don't address it, asking the seller to take care of it, then we might have to negotiate and both parties pay. So if I figure these things out as the agent going through it, I can start adding up some of the costs. And on the purchase and sell agreement, it says seller is responsible to pay up to the first X number of dollars of repairs. And those repairs are called out by the appraiser. So if there's certain things, I'll put $300 there, maybe $500. That way it's covered and the seller's going to take care of it. If there aren't any repairs that need to be done, then they don't have to pay that $300 or $500. So address that. It's easier up front. Some of the things to look for would be that earthquake strap. If you have more than 2 steps going down and there's not a handrail, then they need to put up a handrail. If there is, let's say, torn carpet and it's a tripping hazard, it's going to need to be fixed. If there's a cast iron sink, and we don't see too many of those anymore, but if it's chipped and that coating and covering's gone, it's going to have to be fixed. Leaky faucets. The roof needs to have at least 3 years worth of life. On the pop-off valve on the water heater, that line that goes down needs to be, I think, within about 8 inches of the ground in case the water starts to spew all that stuff out, it doesn't burn somebody. So there's a lot of different little things, cracked windows and things, chipped paint outside. And it's always tough when you tell the people to paint the place and they scrape it and there's all these paint scrapings on the ground. And now we have a problem because it has to be cleaned up professionally because they did a poor job. So homeowners can do certain things, but you have to be careful when they do it and how it's done. Okay, so we'll review what's on the data sheet and we'll review what we saw in the closing or when we were showing it. Then we need to call the lender for an approval letter. So we want to verify with the lender what type of loan. Maybe they were saying it was going to be an FHA loan or conventional. Well, do they know today we're writing up an offer? Which way are we going to go? So you can write it up the correct way. How soon can we close? Well, I'm thinking we can close on this date. Great. So you write that down. So you have all this knowledge, but it's just helping you with the quivers in your bow to be prepared when you write up the offer, because they say the lender can close on this date. Great. So go through that. How much to offer? Ask them for an approval letter based upon that, and just say, I'll call you back if we modify the price. That way you don't get a letter that's stating that they qualify for $300,000 when you're only offering $285,000. You don't want to provide a letter that's higher than what you have, because the people might counter back saying, oh, these guys can qualify for $300,000, so they're only offering $285,000. Let's counter back at $290,000. So just be cautious. Also checking with them about if there's any funding delays with the lender. Are we same-day funding? Most people are, but there was a time when people funded the next day, and it was always tough because if you had more than one property in a row and you didn't have them all funded on time, there was a problem. Then you need to call the listing agent to verify that the property is still available. That's so key, especially today. I've had people that email off an offer and they don't even call the agent, and then it's like, hey, what's going on? Oh, I didn't even know. Oh, it's pending or something. So make sure that it's still available. Ask for what the seller's ideal closing date would be. Well, they have another offer on another home. They're closing on the 20th of October. You write that down. This is the date that they would like. If your people need to do something sooner than that, you can always ask, but most likely no, because they're going to need to get into something else as well. Ask them about the title company where they're closing, because it makes it simpler. So if they're closing at ABC Title Company and you're thinking about XYZ, they might not be quite as excited about that because they're going to have to go to two different places. If it doesn't make a big difference, you can close where they are. It makes it simpler, less confusion. And if there's two offers and there's just one of these simple things here that would be ideal for the sellers to have, and your offer has it and the other offer doesn't, maybe you'll win out because of that. So get all of that type of stuff figured out. Then what I always like to do is I'll ask one more question and I'll just sit there quietly. So what do you think it's going to take to get this offer put together? And I just wait. And sometimes they'll say, well, if you had this certain price or this or that, they might say something that will help you out. And if you're representing the buyer, whatever they're saying, you can take and share with your buyer. So you have to just make sure that you're doing things correctly. Then also ask for a time frame for the sellers to respond, because they might be out of town if it's a corporate owner or something. That way you don't cut your offer down too short for a time frame. And it's always tough when you say, oh, we want a response by tonight at 6 o'clock. Well, we look at the clock and it's 3. Is that reasonable? Well, we really want to know if we got this property so we can go on to something else. Well, how about tomorrow? Give them a little bit more time. Because if they're not going to be able to make your deadline anyway, the chances of them countering are higher, because they're going to have to rewrite a counter offer or something in order to accept your offer, because the extension time frames needs to get modified. So if you have a reasonable amount of time, it doesn't push them too much, then they're more apt to possibly sign the offer the way that you have it. Okay? So you called the listing agent, verified everything. Then what I do is I'd call the home inspector. And you go, why? Well, we're just trying to make sure all of our ducks are in a row. If I can call the home inspector and the home inspector says, yes, I can get that inspection done within the 5 days. Perfect. Your inspection time frame is going to be the 5 days. Oh, I need a little bit longer. It's going to need to be 7. Then you now know you need to put down 7. Why? To protect your buyer so they can have the inspection done. But also the sellers are looking at a shorter time frame. If you put down 7 and you could have had it in 5, and the other offer put down 5, and that's why you lost out, is because of the inspection clause, shame on you as the agent for not doing your job right. We're supposed to get all the things figured out and then give these options to the buyer. Okay, so be prepared with that. Now we've done all of that. Here's where we start to do our thinking, our planning. Determine our options. Okay, can we do a quick close? Or do we have flexibility in the closing date? Because if the buyers are renting, then maybe they could stay in the rental just a little bit longer till the end of the month if we're closing around the 15th. And that might give the sellers a little bit of leeway if they need to stay in the home for a couple extra days. Take a look at the repairs needing to be done versus overlooking them or assuming responsibility for them. If you're asking for something to be fixed, maybe you could fix it instead of asking them to fix it, and you could do it the way that you want. Make sure it's done the way you want it. So should you ask for it or not? So those are options. Home warranty. Do you want to ask for one from the seller, or will the buyers pay for it? Then you keep looking at other ideas and just have all those different ideas figured out. Then you start to write it up. And then any questions that you have on the forms or that are blanks, write those down, because you can still fill those out later, like the title company, closing date. Then you need to go online in Form Simplicity and do the following. Open up the forms package, select purchase, and create the new transaction, and put all the stuff down. Start filling out the information on the content part, importing the MLS, verify you have the right property, update the buyer's information, put all that stuff, and save it all. So then you're ready to go with Form Simplicity. Then you start going in on each of the documents to make sure that they're fine. The agency disclosure brochure, the buyer representation agreement, if you haven't filled one of those and you haven't given the agency disclosure brochure to these people yet. So this is assuming you haven't, but most of the time you maybe have. Then going through the purchase and sell agreement, making sure that everything that you've put down, you have their names right, you have the different items that you need to have included and excluded on there. So you have that part of the information. Now, if you have the property disclosure form, you can import that also into Form Simplicity and have it ready to send out to your buyers so they can initial it, that they've received it, etc. I think it's always great when you write up an offer, if you have those additional documents, to get those signed now, and you can get those back to the listing agent as well. And it's just one less thing that everybody has to worry about. It shows you're on top of it because you can mark on the purchase and sell agreement that they've seen it. They've already seen that document, the seller's property disclosure. Because if not, they have a certain number of days that they can review it. And that's always bad if they haven't signed it yet and it's the closing date. So make sure that you have that done early. So you've done all of that. You've taken care of stuff. Now you're able to meet with the buyers. And you say, we can finally meet with the buyers. Yeah, you've done all this other stuff. You're now ready. You've got your ducks in a row and you're looking smart because you've prepared. Think about it. If you haven't done all of that stuff and you just sit down with the buyer and you say, oh, what do you want to offer? Okay, great. What name should I put down on here? You know, you've been with these people, hopefully. You know some of this stuff. Be a professional. Start getting this information up ahead of time. So when you meet with the buyers, review the options. Talk about some of the strategies, about a quick close. Because if you have all the things that the seller wants, everything on there, possibly you can offer a little bit less money because everything else is what they want. Closing at the title company they want. Possession on the date that they want. The things that you're asking for, included and excluded, are the things that they want. So the only thing besides just signing this offer is we're asking for a few thousand less. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is that worth it to you? Yeah, they sign it. Or if you have a lot of things that are not going to be right on there, the chances are they're going to counter back anyway. In the market we have today, normally you're going to want to give them full price as long as it merits that. If someone's not correct on their pricing of the home, then no. But normally if it's in that ballpark, then maybe you want to go full price and possibly not ask for additional terms or things, maybe not paying for closing costs. So you have to talk about the different options. Once you put together a plan and you decide which way you want to go, fill out the contract that way. Then print them all off. If you're doing it by paper, print them all off so everybody can be prepared and get signatures on everything. And make sure that you've got it. Talk about the earnest money and that they need to take that to the title company first thing tomorrow and get that turned in. I don't think it's wise to wait until, oh, it says we have 3 days or 5 days to do it. No, have them turn it in immediately. Because if there's a problem, we want to make sure that that money's there and it secures everything. Because if they don't turn it in on time, the other party can back out because of a breach of contract. Oh, the earnest money's not there. Oh, I just need 1 more day. Oh, the earnest money's not there. We're going to accept this other offer that's $3,000, $5,000, $8,000 higher because you didn't do your job. So get that turned in immediately. All right. So then we have all that done. Talk to the buyers about what the seller's options are. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I think we have a great offer here. Everything looks good. The only things that I see where the seller may counter back on would be the closing date or this or that. I just mentioned the things, and they could counter back doing this type of stuff. But maybe since you want to offer such a low price on the home, we might offend them, so they might not even counter back. So just explain the different things, and hopefully it's not offensive to the buyers, but it just lets them know what the other side can possibly or will possibly do. So first off, they can accept the offer as written, they can reject the offer, or they can counter. And we want to make sure that they either accept it or counter. Then I point out any items that they may want to counter back, like price. I'll prepare the buyers for a potential counter, saying, well, if they come back anywhere between what we've offered and the price that you told me that you're willing to pay, then we should have an accepted offer, right? Yeah, okay, great. I'll let you know that I'll be contacting you as soon as I hear anything. Where are you guys going to be? Oh, we're going out to Sizzler to celebrate, or oh, we're doing this or that. Great, know what they're doing, but make sure they have their phone with them so we can contact them. And say, even if it's 10 o'clock tonight, I'm going to call you because time is of the essence. We don't want to wait until tomorrow and then something else happens during the night. Okay, so just mentioning that. Once we have all that filled out, I like to call the listing agent while they're sitting there with me, unless I'm doing an electronic signature. But if they happen to be there with me, I like to call the other agent. Why? It shows that I'm proactive. It shows what I'm doing. It shows that I'm going to be sending the information over, or possibly I might even present the offer myself, which is rare in today's thing, but it's still possible to do. So I'll contact them and ask, when the offer is still available, right? I talked to you 45 minutes ago and you said it was, but when do you think we can get this offer presented tonight? Oh, 5 o'clock? Perfect. That'd be great. Would you let me present that offer? Yes or no? Lately, for the past many years, it's been that they just pass it over and the listing agent presents it. But we do have the option to present it if they'll permit us to. And if that's the case, then they have the opportunity to present a counteroffer back to our buyers. So let's say that they don't let me present it. So I'm going to send it over to them. So if I send that to them, great, I send that over, and I might give some of the highlights to the agent right off the top. Hey, it's a full price offer. We're doing this. We're closing at the title company that they want. We're doing this, that. Say all the things that are great. The only difference on here is we're coming in $3,000 less because of blah. But anything that you say, make sure you have permission to say that from your buyers. You don't want to disclose or have something be given away, okay? So if you send that over, send it to them, but make sure when you send stuff over, you don't send everything. I've had people send, oh, we had the buyer rep, the agency disclosure brochure, and the purchase and sell agreement all in one file, and I just sent that whole thing over to the other side. That's not right. You just need to send the purchase and sell agreement and the property disclosure form if you have that filled out already. Send those two things over to the other side. And that way they'll have them. I always ask them to call me back and say, hey, let me know that you got it. Just send me a quick text. Great. Because it's always terrible when they think you're getting something and you send it and they didn't really get it and you've missed out. Okay? When you get a reply from them, the other side, is it in writing? Is it verbal? If it's verbal, then ask, hey, why don't we have this in writing? Oh, I could only reach them on the phone. They're up in Island Park. I couldn't get stuff to them, whatever. But you can at least take that. But understand that a verbal offer is not binding in Idaho. And I've seen people that said, okay, we've got this. I'm sure everything's fine. But greed sets in. So when that other offer comes in the next day and you have a verbal acceptance and this other offer is $5,000 more, they typically find a way to get out of your offer because it's not in writing. Okay? So keep that in mind. Until it's signed and everything's correct and it's signed within the right time frame, you really don't have an offer. Verbal stuff, I wish we could settle with people's handshakes and their word, but attorneys get involved in other stuff and it's not the same as it used to be. So when you get that reply, hopefully it's in writing, print it off or write it down, talk with your buyers, meet up with them. Do you accept or counter back on what it is? If the offer comes back and it's a couple $1,000s above and it's still within that price range that the buyer said that they'd accept, I like to be positive when I call the buyers on the phone. I go, hey, congratulations, you just got yourself a house. And then they're all excited. I said, but there's just one small thing. You know, they countered back $3,000 higher, but it's still below the price range that you said. So we're still okay, right? And then they typically will say, yeah. So then I'll get that over for their signatures immediately. If they're still at Sizzler eating, guess where I'm going? I'm going to Sizzler. Probably not going to eat, but I'll go over to Sizzler and get some signatures. Or if I'm going to email it to them or it's on their phone and they can sign it, whatever way. But it's always good to go through this type of stuff for the signatures earlier on in the transaction, giving them the blue brochure. That way they can sign it electronically. They can do that. The agency representation, the buyer rep, sending that to them earlier on in the transaction so that you work out the kinks of signing stuff. So it makes it nice if you're going to be doing electronic signatures. Always go through the offer when you're explaining it to a seller or explain the counter to your buyer. The biggest complaint I get, even happened again today, is people say, oh, I didn't know what I was signing. That doesn't really stand up in court, but it's a good defense and a way to talk about how bad we are as licensees because we didn't explain something. So please explain it. I like it best when you go paragraph by paragraph through the purchase and sell agreement and explain it. Same thing with the buyer representation agreement, paragraph by paragraph. Some people think that that's only for that one transaction. Well, you could set it up for just one transaction, but typically a buyer's rep is for a certain time frame for anything that you're looking at with these people. Okay? So now, do you accept or do you counter back? If it's close enough, hopefully you accept that. If it's not, and there's some key term that needs to be countered back, keep in mind that it's going to be a little bit touch and go because some other offer could come in. So if they need to modify the closing date, get that down. But I'd call the other agent and just say, hey, everything looks good except for this. Do you think that they'd work out for this type of date? Because you don't want to keep going back and forth. So if you can find something out verbally really quick with the other agent and come to some type of an agreement, then get that signed. That would be a quicker way to do it, because otherwise, right now, anything could happen. Another offer could come in and they could rescind their counter to you, or they won't sign the one that you're sending back to them. So get signatures on it. Get it back to the other agent ASAP if everything's been agreed upon. Don't wait till tomorrow. It's never too late in our business because time is of the essence. So do everything you can quickly. Let's say now that you have all the signatures on the purchase and sell agreement. So what do we do next? Well, go through another time. Make sure you have all the initials, signatures, dates, times on everything. Was the purchase and sell agreement accepted on time? Now, many of you out there write down on a counter offer all other terms and conditions to remain the same. You don't need to say that. It says it in the fine print. A lot of people say, oh, the acceptance date on the original counter has been extended to this. You don't need to say that. It says a new date and time on the counteroffer form. So we need to be smarter and not do that. I see it happening all the time from other people, and it makes me say, hey, they really don't know the contracts. They haven't read it. The time you need to do that is if everything was accepted and you don't have a counteroffer with a new date and time on it. Then you can use the bottom of the purchase and sell agreement and have that late extension be initial, or an addendum that everybody would sign to modify that. Now, if you have a counteroffer and they missed the time frame on the counteroffer and everybody signed it, you're typically going to have your people, if they've missed the time frame, I'd cross off the date and time and modify that and have them initial it, because it's going to be simpler to have the other party initial that as well versus doing another addendum and having everybody do things. So there's different things that you can do for that. Okay, so go through everything, make sure everything's fine, it was accepted on time, upload everything into KW Command and submit it for approval. Make sure everything's complete, not missing. Don't delay in something. If you need something to be initial, don't wait till closing. Why? If there's a loophole for somebody to get out because it wasn't done on time and somebody wants to get out of the transaction, they're going to use that loophole. So please, please, please be on top of it. Get everything done. If you have a transaction coordinator helping you, he or she will be able to go through that and look at it. A second set of eyes is great to make sure that everything's fine. If you don't have a transaction coordinator and you submit it, staff is going to go through it, and their eyes are a second set of eyes to make sure that everything's there. And if you don't have that and you just have somebody else, ask another agent to look it over really quick. Hey, did I miss anything? Can you see this? You know, what do you think that Mike Johnston guy, our broker, is going to call out for or require? Oh, yeah, you know, and they'll say something. I don't want to make it difficult for you, but my job and the compliance side job and many of the TC's job is to make sure that everything's correct so that we have a binding contract that's going to protect your party in this transaction. If there's any wiggle room or something not quite right, we want to get it right so that it protects the parties. So please make sure that you get that stuff back. All right. So let's see, we're down here. Once you have the completed and signed offer, get copies to everyone, lender, title company, and turn it into the office. So make sure you get it to the other agent and make sure that they've received it, because you have to have offer and acceptance. So I say, hey, I call them up. We've got that signed. I just went over to Sizzler and had them sign it. I'm going back to my office and I'll email it to you. All right, great. So I have proof because I talked to them over the phone. And then I get back to the office and I call them again and say, I just sent that to you. Do you have it? And if they respond back, yes, we've got it, great, then I know we're done. If they say, I don't have it yet, oh, well, let me check. And you just make sure that you send it and that they have it. And then you have verbal confirmation. I like to then send a text or an email that says, hey, it's been great working with you with this accepted offer that we have done. I'll follow up first thing of the week and let you know about the home inspection, something like that. That way they have an acknowledgement that I've said that they received it. Because if they didn't, then they're going to respond back really quick and say, hey, we didn't get that, or no, we don't agree to this. But that way you have some other form of writing that proves that you had got that to them. Okay? So get a copy to the other agent, get a copy to the lender, verify that the lender received it, request that they possibly lock in the interest rate, and see if there's any new concerns or anything that they need to make sure we have that loan approval letter. Now remember, there's two different types, well, there's more than two, but there's several different types of letters. One that can just say that they're pre-approved, which is good, or there's one that says they're pre-qualified. They've looked at the numbers. We want to have a pre-approval letter that says everything is good, and it's only subject only to final lender underwriting and a satisfactory appraisal. If we don't have that clean of a letter, the seller can typically back out within 10 business days if they choose not to accept that letter. So make sure you get a good letter. Deliver a copy to the title company and set up a preliminary time to close. Right now you can set something up because you're setting it up, and you can choose whatever time you want versus waiting until you get closer to closing and they only have 4 o'clock in the afternoon or some other time frame early in the morning. So if you set it up now, you have a tentative time frame that's going to work out for your buyers or your sellers, depending which side you're on. Once we've done that, I'm going to check all of the dates on the contract. What does that mean? Well, if you have a home inspection, you have so many days. If you have the preliminary title commitment that needs to be sent out, you have a certain date. If there's supposed to be that lender letter because the one you sent wasn't correct yet, it's not as firm, you have a certain number of days. Your walkthroughs, all these things, put those dates down on a calendar, and I have that attached to the file, and that way I can see what it needs to be. Now, if it's a calendar day, that's midnight or 11:59, right before midnight. If it's a business day, that means 5 o'clock is the deadline for that date. Typically in the contract, it says the date start the very next day would be day 1. So if it's 5 o'clock today and we're writing something up tomorrow, is day 1. Now, it also talks about calendar days versus business days. A calendar day includes holidays. A business day does not include holidays and weekends. So make sure that you're understanding the different dates and you put those things down and you respond in time. If you don't respond in time, it's not necessarily the buyer's fault because you're the one helping the buyer. Now, it could be the buyer's fault if they choose not to respond and you keep telling them, hey, we need to know by 5 o'clock today and have it to them by 5 o'clock today, and they don't, then that's not your fault. But if you don't remind them or say, oh, we need to do it by 5 today, and they get it to you at 6 because you didn't say that, then yes, it could be your fault. So make sure everybody has a copy of everything. Check the dates, put that time frame together, letter of loan approval, and on this sheet that I have that I provided for you to download, it has the default number of days, and those days can change, but these are the typical days. The walkthroughs, the first one's within 3 business days of work completed, second's within 3 business days prior to closing. The lead-based paint inspection, if they're going to do that, closing no later than has a date, possession upon closing. So we've got all that type of stuff. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to schedule the home inspection. Now, I have some people that say, well, how do we know that they're going to choose a good home inspector? Well, I think that we have some great inspectors out there. And if they know of somebody that already, great. If not, you might have some business cards or maybe some discount coupons that help out to minimize some of the cost. Share those with the people. I typically will give the names of the people that I like to do business with. I'm not going to give them a list of 25 people and 20 of them on the list I don't like. So I might give them a list of the ones that I do like and I've had good relationships with that do good inspections and are timely. If you have somebody that doesn't explain things right to you or well, then you might not want to utilize that one. Because if they scare your people off every time, it's going to be bad. So get something set up. Now, I'll explain to the buyers that there's going to be things that come up in that inspection, but we're looking for big things. I say we're going to have a honey-do list on here and somebody's going to do it, whether it's you or whether it's you, or you're going to hire somebody. But we want certain things to be found because no home is perfect. Well, I'm sure there is, but probably not. So we want something that could be improved on. So we have that. After the inspection's done, we can fill out the RE10 to either remove the inspection contingency, to terminate the offer, or to ask for items to be corrected. Now, when we have that report, we look at it and we can fill out the RE10, the inspection contingency document, asking for certain things. Now, be mindful. Sometimes your buyer is going to say, oh, since we went there, those carpets look a little dirtier than we thought before, so we want them to be professionally cleaned. That's really not part of the inspection. That should have been something we would have asked for in the original offer. We're not really looking for different things, but you can still address it if that's what they want to do. But this last week, I wrote up an offer for some people coming here from the other side of the state, and they had 3 things that they wanted. And one of the 3 things was to have the carpets be cleaned. I said, well, we kind of missed out on that. Originally, you were talking about not even having an inspection done because you wanted the home no matter what. But I counseled you to leave that in there so you could have the inspection done. And we did, but that's not something that we typically ask for. So they were okay with that. We did get permission to have the carpets be cleaned by the buyers at the buyer's expense 3 or so days prior to closing because the home is vacant. So that way it can be clean and ready for them to move in. But that way we only asked for an item or 2 that needed to be done versus something that they wanted to be done. In the market today, you want to make sure that you're not shooting your buyers in the foot or having the sellers choose not to do something or do nothing just because you're overly cautious for the buyers. Okay, so we have that. Fill it out, deliver it to the listing agent within the time frame. Now, if the seller does not agree to those items, then review the options. The buyers can either accept whatever the sellers come back with, or they can terminate, or they can go forward without anything being done. Now, once you have that all figured out, turn everything into the office for review. Now, make sure that all the items are addressed on the inspection. I've had sometimes agents say, well, I thought that they're taking care of that themselves, or the inspector. No, you, if you're involved, need to be involved as well with things. Verify with the title company that they have everything. Sometimes they're missing an addendum that changes the price or something at the last minute, or from the RE10, they gave a credit back. Anything like that, make sure that they have everything. Verify with the lender that everything's going okay. Make sure things are fine, that that appraisal's gone out and come back, and if there's any repairs that need to be done on it. Review the preliminary title report. Send a copy to your buyers so that they have a copy of it. Explain some things. On there, it typically shows that if they have a problem, that they can contact the title company and ask for additional questions or things that they may have as a concern. So make sure that you have that happening as well. Okay. Then when you get the closing statement, typically nowadays you get that about 3 days prior to closing. It's great. We have plenty of time to look at it. Sometimes it's a little quicker, but normally we're okay. So take a look at the closing statement. First, you review it for everything. Make sure the price is correct. The things that you're asking the sellers to pay for, that it's actually showing that up. If you're asking for a credit, do you have the full amount of that credit being used? Now, some people argue about if you ask for, let's say, $3,000 in closing costs and you only use $2,500, what can you do with that other $500? Technically, you can have it be for anything that the lender says is okay to count for things for the buyer. It could be a Home Depot card that's giving them a credit for paint for them to do stuff. Maybe it's going to be a credit for them to be able to do that carpet cleaning or pay the bill for the carpet cleaners to come in later. I've had other brokers and other people argue with me saying, hey, you know, if they can't use it, then they can't use it, and we get that back for my sellers. What you need to plan on is if they ask for $3,000, be prepared to pay $3,000 in costs. If the other agent is balking or struggling with it, read the fine print. The fine print says that it can be used for anything possibly other than closing costs at the buyer's discretion. Now, the only catch to that is we have to make sure that the lender is okay with what it's being paid for. Why? There's only so much that the seller and others can contribute into some of the loans. So if that's the case, we need to make sure that that the lender is okay with how that credit's going to be. So verify the figures. Inform the buyers of the date, time, location, and the name of the closer. Have them bring in a cashier's check in the amount of X number of dollars made payable to ABC Title Company. Remind them to bring photo ID, and it's not too late to purchase a home warranty if they want to still get something like that. They could. And remind them still, don't go out and buy something on credit to celebrate, even the day of closing, because until it's funded and recorded, the lenders can still pull up a quick little credit report and see if anything's changed. And if it has, I've seen it that they stopped the closing. So make sure that you're still informing the buyers of that. Now, there's no possession given until it's recorded. There's no keys given until it's recorded. You can't move anything in until it's recorded. Anybody catching a little thing here of what I'm saying? Nothing until it's recorded. Why? Well, we're dealing with entrusted property, something that we have a responsibility of. Even if the other agent gave us the key and said, once it's recorded, you can give it to them, you don't get to have that same trust with your buyers and say, here, I'm giving you the key, don't do anything until I call you. No. We've had people move in early, and we've had those agents get fined by the real estate commission because they were not acting and taking care of somebody else's property. I've had times when something happened at the last minute and we have people that have moved into the house. We've had sellers drive by and here's people moving into their house and it hasn't recorded yet. There's a lot of horror stories. So don't let people do that. And now you're saying, well, what if they had the weekend to move in and something delayed it and it's now closing on Monday? Well, hopefully they have other plans. Hopefully they've got something else figured out. If not, we can always approach the seller to see if they'll do that, but they're not required to let them in, even if it's a sad story that they're going to be homeless over the weekend. I'm sorry, but we don't make that decision. We can ask the sellers if they're willing to do it, but many times they're going to say no. And I would encourage you to say no. It's sad to say, but that's when the biggest problems and lawsuits come in, is because it hasn't closed yet. They now move into the property and they say, oh, there's this other problem with the house. There's this one wire here, blah, 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 blah. And they start talking about all these other things, and they now want that to be resolved before they give permission for it to close or fund on Monday. Okay? Once it's recorded, give the buyers the keys, suggest that they have the property rekeyed, and some of the home warranty programs that you purchase include a rekeying. Some do, some don't. So if that's the case, get that scheduled so you can have that happen. Now, provide the buyers, and this can be ahead of time, but provide the buyers with information about getting the utilities switched over. Rekey the home, because you never know who has a copy of the key. Change your address, the mail forwarding with the post office. Verify that the home warranty information has gone into effect. Set them up to keep in contact with them on your some type of a reminder. Should you get them a closing gift? Have them write up a testimonial, a video clip, social media, that type of stuff. Record some things. Right now, they're really happy. Get a picture with them and you, so you can use it for additional marketing later on. You might write something up that gives them you permission to do so, or even their verbal saying that, yeah, go ahead and use it. Now, what if there's a concern after closing? They've moved into it, something's happened, whether it's the day of, or it could be a couple days later, or maybe even a week later. Whatever their concern is, have them put it in writing and get that to the other agent. You're saying, well, the deal's done. Yes, it's done, but we want to protect all parties involved because we might have a lawsuit here, and it could be something very simple that we could have taken care of versus it going a little farther and them getting upset at us. So we typically have them put down what their concern is and what they want done. Okay, so now that we have that, we get that to the other agent and they can respond. But first off, also check to see if the home warranty covers it, because possibly it will, but then maybe not. Then on our last page, this is for some other options that weren't really mentioned so far. So we talked about how to handle an offer from the buyer's side. But let's suppose that we're on the listing side and we're working with the seller. Sometimes we'll have more than one offer come in on the property. So what do? Well, we present all offers. We don't say, oh, that one's lower than this other one, so I'm not going to present it. No, we're required by law to present all written offers. If it's not in writing, I would tell that other agent, say, hey, I'm sorry, I don't have a written offer here. I really need to have you put something in writing. Well, just tell them we'll offer $45,000 $450,000 will close on this date. Well, you and I both know that there's a lot more to it than just the closing date and the amount of money. Who's paying for what? Which title company is it going to be at? How are we going to prorate stuff? What's included? What's excluded? All these other little things. What type of deed is it going to be transferred in? So unless it's in writing, we don't know. So I typically will tell that other agent, hey, put it in writing so we have a firm offer and I can get that presented. Now, if they don't, I'll still mention to my sellers, I'll say, I had a phone call from an agent that wanted to give us a verbal offer. They mentioned this and this, but I said, hey, there's so many other concerns, and I go through those concerns and ideas of things that are missing, that I asked them to put that in writing. I hope you're okay with that. Oh, yeah, we're okay. So I've disclosed the offer, that there was something, but I presented all written offers. So make sure that you do that. Now, when an offer is presented, typically if it's rejected, you can write across the front of it, rejected, and put a date and time on it. That used to be required for audit purposes. We've since changed the law last year that we don't have to have those marked that way. But we still have agents that will call and say, hey, I want proof to know that my offer was presented. Well, the way that we can show proof could be by having that rejected across the front of the first page of the offer. Have our seller's initial and date it. That would be one thing we could do. And I think that that would be great. Is it a requirement? No, because if it's not signed, it's rejected. They didn't agree to it. However, some people will argue that they want proof that it was presented. Okay. So if you have multiple offers, some people will use the multiple counter offer form and send that back to 2 or 3 different offers. Pros and cons of that. Well, it now lets every one of those parties know what you want, because you're telling them this is what you want. If you sign it, then you may be the one coming into play. But then you have 3 people, let's say, that you send it off to, and all 3 of them sign it and send it back. You still get to choose one of the 3. You're still going to have people be upset. So what I find better to do is just contact those agents and say, hey, we have an offer from you and 2 other agents. My sellers instructed me to say, if you want to modify your offer or make any changes to it, you can do so. And we have until 5 o'clock that we're going to be doing that. So if you make any changes, get it back to me by 5 o'clock, and then we'll represent those offers to the seller, and the seller will make a choice at that point in time. Well, the reason why that, in my opinion, is better is you're not going back and saying, oh, we want $300,000 and this and this. Because if you have these 3 offers, maybe one of them is going to go $305,000 and remove this contingency or that. So don't harm your sellers. Ask for them to come back with their best offer. I don't like to say highest and best, but that's basically what we're doing. So that way they can come back with a great offer or an improved offer, instead of all 3 of them being the same and you still have some people upset at you, and then you have a lawsuit for your seller. Because that can happen. People want proof that it was presented. Oh, why did we miss out? We did sign your offer. Because some agents don't understand that multiple counter offer form comes back to your sellers and they get to sign it again saying you're the one we chose. So I don't like that form, and I prefer you don't use the multiple counter offer form. Now, what if you have an offer and you either wrote a counter offer back to somebody or they've written something to you and another offer comes in? Well, you can rescind that offer that you have. How do you rescind an offer? Well, first off, contact the other agent, and I say you need to do that by the phone. Contact them and say, hey, have your people signed that counter offer yet? Oh, no, I'm meeting with them here in about 15 minutes. Well, my seller or your buyer, whoever it is, has asked me that we're going to rescind that offer, so it's no longer valid. So we've terminated that. Well, why? What's up? Well, we have another offer that's come in, and my people would like to look at that. Oh, okay, well, and I'll let them know if you want to modify something, you can, etc. But right now we're putting it on hold. Now, what have I done? I protected my clients, or the people I'm working with, whether they're represented or not, but the people I'm working with, that they can look at this other offer. I'm going to follow that up with a written text and most likely an email reiterating the phone call. It says, hey, sorry about that when I called you at 3 o'clock, letting you know that we've rescinded that offer. But I'll let you know what they've chosen to do, type stuff. Because that then puts them on notice, and you have documentation proof, the voice, the text, and the email, that it was rescinded and canceled. Now, when that second offer comes in and you don't like it, you can still go back to that first one and say, okay, we rejected that other offer. This one's still good. If it's in the time frame, great. You can unrescind it, or you can send back a new counteroffer with different terms and time frame for response if you want to. Now, remember, time is of the essence in this. You don't want to wait to get back to people. You have to act quickly. Don't lose out, because if you take too much time, you're possibly going to lose out on the transaction. If you say, I'll wait till tomorrow to get signatures, that could be bad. Or, oh, I have the offer signed, but I'm going to swing by this restaurant really quick before I send it back to the other agent. Well, acceptance and delivery are two different things. They have to have it signed, so acceptance, and delivered and given that notice to the other party. They need to have it. If they don't have it, then that's not complete acceptance and delivery. So make sure you get it there and you verify that they have it. So when you send it over and you call them and they say, yeah, we got it. Okay, good. So we're put together. Great. Got that done. Then I'll send a text and email just like I did on the other part saying, I look forward to working with you, et cetera, et cetera. Now, when there are or potentially multiple offers, make sure that yours is the best. Why? Well, because you want to get the offer. How? Well, you should have done some research ahead of time to know what it was that seller was wanting. If it's full price and that's where you're weak on, you might want to modify that to get it to the full price. It could be the term or the time frame or something like that you want to modify. So do that. Now, sometimes you're going to have clauses that are written up that say, oh, we'll beat any other offer by $500, and they want to have proof on it. So you just have to be very careful with that when that happens. So if, let's say that somebody wrote up on there that they'll beat your offer by $500. If they say that, they just have given up, because sometimes they'll say, we'll beat it by $500, but we want proof and we'll go up to $350,000. Well, if they only offered 325 and they're willing to go up to 350 or 330 or whatever number I said, they just told you what they're willing to accept for a counter. So you can counter offer their side at that other price, and you can reject that clause that says that you're going to provide proof. You can just remove that from the contract, say paragraph number 4, line such and such to be removed from the contract. Then you counter back at that price. Then I always like to add, in the event that the property does not appraise for the amount offered, the buyer will pay the difference in cash at closing. Because if they do this escalation clause or it ends up being more than what it appraises for, we just lost out on that other transaction. So if they're going to do that and they're willing to go up to that price, they can pay the difference in cash at closing. All right, so make sure that yours is the best offer and you understand the options and you can go through that. Well, hopefully there are no additional questions or anything like that. If you do, please go online and you can download the handout for this particular building blocks class, or you can call me with any other questions that you have.